How are you tonight,
I
Professor?
am doing well. I see we have another hat on. Have you been hunting? Is that a hunting hat?
No, actually, it's like it has palm trees in it. It's still somewhat of a summer hat, even
It's a
though it's
summer
labeled it,
hat.
but it's not white. And it's one of those ones that have
Oh,
it doesn't have a top on it.
okay. It's like a golfing hat or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Thought it'd be something different.
That looks pretty nice. I
Yeah,
like that.
you like
Yeah,
that?
bring the color out. Okay. It is still summertime. I think we've got blazing heat out there. They're saying up here, at least in Maryland, it's the hottest day of the year or something.
Yes.
We're beating records. Probably true everywhere.
And fall doesn't really start till like September 22nd, even though people are getting the pumpkin stuff out. It's not time yet.
I think we're starting to put out the winter stuff for Christmas in the stores too. But that's probably
Probably.
happening nationwide. Yeah.
Get a little way on the hand.
All right, what do we got tonight?
All right, so tonight we're talking about my family only invites me over to entertain their friends. What should I do?
The entertainer.
Yeah. Have you ever had that happen?
The answer is yes to that.
You were the
I
entertainer.
was,
I could see that.
I was the entertainer.
I can see that.
Yeah, they always wanted me to be there a little bit early. Uh, so I'd be there when the first people showed up. Typically family, as usual. That's what your situation is tonight. So that's where we are.
Now, what would you do when you were there early? Like greet them a certain
Well, I'm
way?
going to tell my
You gonna tell
age.
us about
Well, I'm going to tell you my age for saying
Oh.
this. I used to act out when I like Ed. What was it? Red Skelton.
Oh,
Red
really?
Skelton. Yeah, he would do that. Like he was a bird and so on. And I used to mimic him when I was young.
Oh, okay.
So my family really liked for me to come around at Christmas time, holidays to different places, and to play out Red Skelton.
Oh, well, that
And
sounds
he had to
like
be the
fun.
bum and all this, just like he did.
Yeah.
And they would just laugh and laugh. Mm. Never thought I was going to be anything, some of the family, but my mother and father did, but the rest of them wonder.
Well, it sounds
Anyway,
like fun.
if you don't remember Red Skelton, go look him up, folks, a little bit.
Yeah, there
He
you
was
go.
pretty cool as an old actor. He was old when I was young. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
I remember that.
No, this is a difficult situation, though, because even as I became a little bit older, the cousins and so on would pick on me and telling me I was ignorant. I think was the best word to put. You're acting dumb. You're never going to be anything or whatever. I think in our situation tonight that we'll cover later, I don't know how my competition is going to handle it, but I'm looking at it from the standpoint that um, I'm a musician. I sing, and I like classical music, and they want me to sing country or rock and roll. And they want me to put on the outfits accordingly and just strum that guitar, and that's just not what I want.
They want to dress you up.
They want to dress me up, play the part. And the thing that came just like when I was acting like Red Skelton, they wanted you to have some outfits, some costumes. So I had a couple of little costumes that I would wear as well when I was doing the different skits that he would do, trying to mimic him. So it's kind of cute. But it does demean you some, I guess. But on the other hand, you have to realize that you got to be comfortable in your own skin and enjoy what you're doing. Didn't bother me when I was younger, but when I got older, I was like, well, they're kind of picking at me a little hard here. So then what happened, and pretty much as I will argue tonight, if we want to call it that, or in the presentation I'll make, is they try to manipulate you into continuing to do it. Those that enjoyed it the most. Even you had, the people who were throwing the rotten apples at you. And, there's just different manipulative types, as we know, sarcasm they'll use or try to make you feel bad if they need you there, or they're not going to be able to impress their particular family members. So every way they can to manipulate you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to dig too deep in that because I want to get on over to the Bible study. I've been told I'm a little long-winded, which, yeah, I am. So maybe I can wrap this thing up within 20 minutes instead of 30 plus. I don't know, but we'll try. So I'm going to look at and go through tonight what I consider to be one of the greatest entertainment stories in the Bible. And, let the show begin. Now, there's many in the Bible. Don't get me wrong. There's Stephen in the lion's den. There's David and Goliath. We talked about the other week. Samson at the temple. destroying that. But this one has a little bit more meaning because even though we would say with Samson, there was some manipulation going on with that young lady with him. Uh, this one is some pretty strong manipulation. So I want to continue the story of Moses, if possible,
Okay.
and continue where we were in talking about Moses and the Israelites. But we're going to do a little bit backing up. Instead of talking about once the Israelites left Egypt, we're going to talk about before they left Egypt. And we mentioned last week that Moses felt that when God came to him and selected him to be a prophet, if you want to call it that, in order to take his people out of Egypt, Moses said that he wasn't a good spokesman. So I'm going to say then that God made him the backup singer, if you'll let me get by with this.
Okay.
The backup singer in the sense that he gave him someone else, and that was his brother Aaron, that's about 3 years older than he. And he was going to let Aaron be the spokesman. So God would speak to Moses. Moses would speak to Aaron. And Aaron then would speak to either the Israelites or to Pharaoh.
Okay, now was this Moses' idea or God's?
This was God's idea.
That he would send it through Moses to Aaron.
To Aaron. That
Okay.
is correct.
Okay.
As the Lord said, Moses, you will be as a God, not the God, but as a God, meaning at a higher level in Pharaoh's eyes, because you will have then, of course, really, I'm calling it a prophet, and really Moses was the prophet, and we can say that Aaron, his brother, was the high priest, but we're looking at through Pharaoh's eyes, Moses that was the one that was the ultimate leader, and then this other person, which would be Aaron, was the prophet of Moses. Okay, so we're there. So if we think about then, he's a backup singer, but he was the one that really was in charge. And Pharaoh knew that. He just wasn't the one out there that was giving out the orders and commands, so to speak, in front of Pharaoh. And sometimes being a good backup singer is not a bad idea. Even in our situation tonight that we'll speak later, a backup singer could be one that's really in charge ultimately, because they may be the best singer there, but in this case, since the family's pushing on them to be the entertainer, they tell the family, "Oh, why don't you be the entertainer and I'll be your backup singer? You know, we'll make it work together." And of course, the backup singer may come forward, and sing a little bit themselves, trying to help out the person who's going to be the lead. But I think that Moses had an excellent lead singer there when he brought Aaron on board. Because Aaron apparently was also favored by God, because Aaron didn't seem to complain when God asked Aaron in order to go see Moses. Now, not that the scripture really gets into that, but there had to be some type of link still between Moses and Aaron, even though Moses had left, so to speak, Egypt many years ago. But there must have been some type of contact, because as soon as God spoke with Aaron, Aaron was delighted to go see his brother to take care of him.
Okay.
Now, we're getting now to the manipulation, the good old dirt, as they'd say back home. And that is the talking with Pharaoh. So Moses and Aaron go there. And we start off with Moses was told to, quote, pitch his staff onto the floor, and the staff would turn into a snake. Well, Pharaoh's magicians, they did the same thing. Now, the story goes in the Bible, though, that Moses, the staff that was thrown on the floor by Aaron speaking and so on, that particular staff ate up all the other snakes that were by the magicians. Now, the first thing that came to my mind when I read that, I was like, how long does it take to do that? And the reason I say that, well, there's another good one too. I don't know. But if you think about it, if you watch a snake in real life, sorry, folks, been there, done that back in the woods, eating an animal or whatever, trying to swallow it or whatever, it takes a little time. Snake trying to, swallow a rat, and they'll open up their jaws, gills, as we would call them sometimes, like fish. But anyway, they would open up their jaws more so they could swallow. It's a timely process. So I was sitting back thinking, well, how long did it take that staff to swallow up those other snakes? It must have been pretty quick. Otherwise, we'd be sitting everybody around watching it for hours and hours. So I don't think it happened that way. But
Magical snake.
yeah, well, it was through God.
Yeah.
So it must have gone pretty quickly. That snake was able to, swallow, 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 and then go get another one, swallow, swallow, swallow. Anyway, I know it doesn't have anything through the story to deal with, but I just wonder how long they sit around and watch this occur. But it did occur. That's number one. And then after we have the snakes, so to speak, now we have the plagues, and there were 10 total. And I must say, it's hard for me to remember all the plagues in proper order. So I've got them written down here on the side. So y'all forgive me when I kind of take a glance, because I am taking a peek to see what's going on here. So we start off, Moses via Aaron tells Pharaoh, please let the Israelites go. They need to go worship God, and they need to go outside of Egypt to do so. Well, of course, the answer was no. And you can imagine Pharaoh, he's the big king or whatever, no, next. He's got something. Well, the next thing they did then was that the Nile River, which everyone had their water from, it actually was turned to blood. Well, the magicians got up there and they did a little bit of that too, to say, Pharaoh's, to show, hey, we can do this too. So that was a pretty big event, though, because even the water that they had in their urns, or whatever you want to call it, the wooden urns, it also turned to blood. Everything turned to blood. Mm-hmm. Pharaoh didn't seem to be too impressed, because his magicians, magicians, the magic show, could do the same. But he did turn around and say, please stop this. And of course, Aaron, Moses talks to God, and it was stopped. And by the way, during that time, what the Egyptians and Israelites, is affecting both, were doing was digging outside, kind of around the river, so to speak, so that water that was kind of filtered through the soil would not be, quote, blood. The next thing that happened, though, were the frogs. And so the frogs came up on the land. Well, again, these magicians were able to produce some frogs too. So it did bother, needless to say, Pharaoh. And he, you want to call it pleaded, whatever, to Aaron and Moses to please make these frogs stop. So they did so. And of course, there were just frogs all over the place in their houses and everything. And of course, they just put them all out there, in heaps, just dead frogs. You can just imagine the stink that was going on. Bad enough that blood in the river stunk, but now we got all the frogs stinking too. Right. Well, the third one we got to is, the Bible calls it gnats. Some people call it lice. That was the next plague that happened. That's kind of bad. If you just think about, when you have fruit sitting around down south and you got gnats all over the place, can you just imagine they're just coming in swarms? Well, that time the magicians of Pharaoh were not able to handle that. They couldn't do that. That was something completely different, needless to say. Also was different about that was that the land where the Israelites were, that part, I think it was Goshen was the name of it. But anyway, their sector of land where they lived, because they didn't live, amongst the Egyptians, kind of like they're sectioned off. Gnats didn't come there. They weren't affected by it whatsoever. It was only the Egyptians that were being impacted by it. And that's something unique, is that, God has his ways. And so it's one of those things in the military, and again, I'm not a military buff, but, you start wide, but then in order to see where you might break through flanks or whatever, and then once you do, you start honing in. Well, God was showing Pharaoh that he could hone in pretty good. Well, Pharaoh, each time these events occurred, he would ask Moses and Aaron to please remove these plagues. And later on, by the way, I believe it was after the locusts came, and we'll get to that. He even said, Pharaoh says, I've sinned. Have your God to please remove these. I mean, it was getting to him a little bit. But each time he would go back. And it was like he didn't even realize what he had said. Or maybe he forgot what he said. The Bible calls it a hardened heart. And you have to really think about what a hardened heart is. It's when you just don't care. It's like if you make a promise to someone or have a contract with someone, and it's as if you don't remember making it, and you don't even care that you made it. Now, the Bible says that God hardened Moses' heart. Pharaoh's heart toward Moses, toward Aaron, and toward God. Now, it's an interesting concept because, again, I don't read old literature. I just have to look at interpretations of others. Uh, Several believe when it says that is that God allowed him, Pharaoh, to stay with that mood, that heart of being, I don't care. Now, there's a story to be said that because even Paul makes mention in the New Testament, Apostle Paul, that sometimes if we come to a point with God where we won't change and we continue in our plight that we just don't even care if we should change or should. I mean, we don't even care about God anymore. We've had enough. That God will just let your heart go hard. It's almost like he'll let you just stay with your sins, with your lust, whatever you have, your pride, whatever that's there, and he'll just let your heart go and be done with you. So we want to be careful about that. And I want to bring that up now, in that we should always be repentive, meaning we're going to sin. Even Paul talks about, when I sin, it's not, and I don't want to sin, but I still sin. It's not really me that's doing it. It's my body doing it. It's a part of me. It's something inside of me. And why am I doing what I don't want to do? And like he says, we repent at that point. We ask for forgiveness. We try harder not to do it the next time. But again, we try to do better. We may still fail. I mean, it's just like having a type of addiction for that type of sin. That's a bad term, but we just can't stop, it seems like. But as long as we keep trying and we have that repentative nature, then God's not going to turn around and say, hey, your heart is just hardened and you're not going to change.
Right.
That's sorrowfulness. So even when Pharaoh mentioned later that he had sinned, he didn't mean it. They were just words because his subsequent actions weren't showing he was trying to make a change. Now, I must admit, later on in the plagues, he did tell Moses and Aaron that the people could perform their sacrifices in his land, meaning in Egypt there. And Moses told Aaron to tell him, no, we're not doing that because our sacrifices are pretty much disgusting to your people, the Egyptians, and we need to go away. We need to be about 3 days out from this place. Well, of course, first he says, yes, Pharaoh. And then, of course, as soon as he asked for the plague to be removed, then his heart, it goes the other way. Like he didn't even say that I'd seen it. Like he didn't even say, yeah, I agree that you could go. So we keep rolling through the plagues, and these continuation of after the gnats, all of these only occurred to the Egyptians. So then we get the flies all over the place. Man, that had to be disgusting.
Really?
Yeah.
We get flies sometimes.
I know. And then we have, and I'm reading off this because I can't remember all these, the livestock, all the livestock died. A worst one, I guess, is affecting the people themselves, all the Egyptians, bulls. In fact, it was so bad, the bulls were on people that the magicians also had bulls that they couldn't even come out and see Aaron and Moses. They were hurting so bad. I mean, that's just another disgusting. Then we had hail that came and destroyed the land. Needless to say, all the crops and everything just knocked them down. Then we had the locusts that I spoke of, and they came through as just like the land was black, was filled with locusts. So the locusts were eating everything that the hail had knocked over, trees and everything else. And then we get down to darkness. And again, even in darkness, all of these things were happening on the property or the land of Egypt, but not happening where the Israelites were. And then, of course, we hear about the death of the firstborn. And that one was the one that really got hold of Pharaoh. That one bothered him. He lost his firstborn as everyone else did. Of course, the Israelites, we know that was the time of the Passover where they had put blood from animal sheep onto their particular entrances to their homes, ate their quick Passover meal as God had commanded. But that one was the one that got Pharaoh, and he allowed the children of God, the Israelites, to go with Moses and Aaron. However, we talked about the story last week, I believe it was, where he still turned around, and after that, his heart was still hardened, and he changed his mind. So he's telling his soldiers to go after him and get them back. So we know how that turned out. They drowned, needless to say, when the rivers were parted, and then the rivers were unparted. So they drowned at that time. So there's a couple of walkaway messages that I covered going through this process, but I want to go back and just touch on those one more time. Number one, we're all sinful. It's in our genes, as they say. It's not going to change.
Right.
But don't get to the point where you just turn completely against God. Like, I just can't do it right, and so I'm just going to forget about it, And I am what I am, and who gives, any type of worry, because it is the way it's going to be. If you do that, your heart is already hardened, and God will just leave you be. And he might even just kind of push you a little bit more to continue to have that hardened heart as he did Pharaoh. The second part is, folks, when we talk about manipulative people, and sometimes we think about, it may be family members, it may be a boss. Man, can you imagine trying to work for a boss like Pharaoh? And the answer is, we may have had one in our lives that's pretty much like that.
Yeah.
Whatever they tell you, they change their minds pretty quickly the next day or week, and they'll be like, I never said that. You're like, you got to be kidding me. And these people, even if you get it written in the quote contract form, they'll still say that's not what they meant when that contract was written. And you won't win. And I'm going to say again, you will not win immediately, at least. Maybe in the long term, if you want to go through the legal battles, but you're not going to win immediately. Why? Because they are the dictator. They're likened to Pharaoh. And we see these people, and my response is to pray for them, but just get out of their way. Meaning, you may want to leave that particular job as soon as you can. Find another place where there are decent people. I didn't say perfect people, but more decent people.
Right.
And by the way, don't take it as an affront that there's something wrong with you. Realize it that, again, as we said last week, God's just testing you a little bit. God's trying to make you a little bit stronger. There's always something to help us grow, and that's what he's wanting us to do.
Yeah.
So number one, walking away from this, you're going to deal with people like that in life. They're just there. And feel sorry for them. You really have to, because
they gotta be miserable.
They have to be.
Yeah.
And they aren't close to God either by acting that way. You just figure that one. So pray for them that somehow, some way they might change.
Yeah.
The second part is, don't you become that way. And that's me too. Don't become that way, because in doing so, you will be left with your own mess, as my mother used to say, to clean up. And that mess may be for an eternity. The other part is, you can still be a great entertainer, though, meaning that you have God on your side. And in doing so, when you respond back to these people, keep the Lord in mind when you do so. Act as a Christian. All right? Because God's going to help you. Now, I'm not saying he's going to make you Moses or he's going to make you Aaron, but he's going to help you. Keep your mental sanity while you're dealing with these people. Be a great entertainer. Just tell them, my background in the Bible, my background as a Christian, my background in servitude to God, this isn't right. If they're asking you to do something incorrect, that you know, as I used to say, moral, ethically is incorrect. And stand by your principles that God gave you. And the last to be said is, don't worry about it if you're not the main entertainer here. Being a backup ain't bad.
Right.
It's a good job. It really is.
You do what you want to do.
You do what you want to do
instead of what they want you to do. And if they're not happy with it, then they can do what they want to do.
That's exactly right. But you're there to help too.
Right.
So getting back to the situation we were supposed to touch on, and hopefully I did indirectly, going around the curve as I always do. Family member invites me over to entertain their friends. What should I do? Well, you can stay home or you can go. My response is, try to either be the backup singer for them, or if they want you as the lead singer, let them pay you something. Make your worth known to them. Also, if you want to sing classical, sing it. They're just going to have to get over it if they want you. By the way, they're probably going to take you because they can't afford anybody else. You'll be nice.
Right.
And that's just
you probably have a cheaper rate from the family discount.
Yep. That is so true.
A win-win for everybody.
Yep.
But maybe set the tone before you start so they know what to expect.
And I think that's a good idea in all of life, to set the tone. You know, whether you're having a difficulty with the boss that you're meeting with, that you've had some past problems, the literature will tell you, sit down and talk with them. I think you have to set the tone. It may continue to go bad. Hopefully it'll get better. But if people know who you're dealing with, that you've got God and God is on your side, and these are your standards that you can and can't do, particularly when they're trying to get you to do things that are wrong,
Yeah.
then I have found that people back off. They really do. Now, they may ultimately let you go. You may get your severance letter, as they call it. But most of the time, no. And you might ask, well, why? And the reason is because you're a good person. You're not going to, quote, cheat on them. And employers are worried about people stealing all the time. And, that happens.
Yeah.
And you're going to try to stay with your word the best you can. You're a good person, as they
Yeah,
say.
true.
Good person.
Good thoughts.
That's all I got for tonight,
Yeah.
folks. Anything you want to ask me that I'm in trouble about since I report to you, Moses? I'm sorry, Stoicess.
I don't think so. These things that happen, were they like consecutive, like right after each other?
They were consecutive.
Yeah.
In fact, the Bible refers to it, well, I should say the literature refers to it is the 333. And in that, just like with the first part we were talking about, and again, I've got to look at my notes. Sorry, folks. The Nile, the frogs, and then the gnats. Pharaoh was warned about the first two, but then God just let the gnats happen. It's like, let me just throw something on here just to irritate him that much more. And then the second of the three was the flies, death of the livestock, and then the bulls. Let's just throw the bulls in there. Let's just keep doing it. It's like, man, we told you 2 out of 3, but that third one, in line, you're going to get it. And so anyway, that was something to me. They didn't, and God didn't tell them. They did exactly what God said. God told Moses what to do. Moses told Aaron would tell them. But when it came to these third ones, time charms, so to speak, they didn't tell them. It just.
And maybe that's where the saying comes, things happen in threes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea to think about that.
Yeah.
So we have to dig that one up and look. See if it came from that one.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that with us tonight.
Well, you're welcome.
Very interesting as always. You always have a nice spin and some knowledge and wisdom to share, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll call it God's wisdom, but thank you.
Right.
Be repentant. Try to do better, but always keep God foremost, because it is your best shield you got in dealing with those that try to manipulate you.
Yes.
Believe you me.
You need him to lean on, that's for sure.
Amen.
So,
all right.
Well, everyone take care. Have a great week.
We'll see what hat she wears next week. Thanks, everyone.
Running out, but we'll see.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.